We're always told to speak from our heart, which I am, but my mom always said, if you want to get it right, write it down. So I wrote down what I'd like to share today in my opening. Thank you, Charlie, for that kind introduction. I don't know what everyone's superpower is, but I can pretty much go into anyone's kitchen with whatever you have and make a pretty good meal. It is how I grew up, and it is one of those things that is one of my favorite things about myself. So I want to begin by saying how deeply honored I'm here to be at SOCAP25. This is my 5th time being at SOCAP. I can say one of my first SOCAPs, in 2019, I had no idea what this space was. My friend Jamie and I showed up, and we didn't know how to engage. It was overwhelming. It was still at Fort Mason, which if you took a pause, you could see Alcatraz just around the way, which is weird and amazing all at the same time. But SOCAP was also a space where Indigenous ways of being and thinking were sidecars. We were tents. We were grouped as sort of like an add-on. And I can say through the diligence of Indigenous people who have spent years building relationship and bringing Indigenous people to this stage, to this space, to this work, is why I get to be here today, is because of that deep work. So I want to say thank you. But I also want to say that part of the power this year of SOCAP is I had a chance as the first Indigenous advisor, maybe not first, but one of the Indigenous advisors, to try to imbue across all the tracks Indigenous ways of thinking and being. Because what I want to share is that Indigenous people globally and here in the United States, we share some of the most powerful blueprints for the future of finance, climate, and humanity itself. As we begin today, I want to name what I hope for and what I ask us as a community to hold. And that offering is grounding. Grounding in a reality that is both sobering and yet full of possibility. Indigenous people understand that many truths can exist at once. We understand that complexity, that your truth may not be mine, but it's all valid. And as we hold this complexity of today, of joy and grief, despair and hope, and yet we still move forward, it's the ability for all of us, and it's desperately needed, not just this week, but going forward. Because we are living in a great time of complexity, politically, socially, environmentally, financially, democratically. And while it might feel natural to open this conversation with great hope, I just want to take us for a minute and a pause. So for thousands of years, Indigenous people have carried the songs, the ceremonies, and the dances that each of us hold as a purpose. We heard from Greg this morning. Sing us a song of being present, of clearing your mind. They tell us how to live. These stories, these songs, these ceremonies, they tell us how to repair and how to begin again. I am a Diné person. We believe in emergence. When we are not in right relationship with the world, we have to ask ourselves, what happened? So in my stories, we have had to merge into the next world, into the next world. Because at some point, we will get this right. At some point, we will have a real relationship with the world and the earth around us. But in emergence, we aren't going to all make it. And we can't take everything with us. We have to learn what to leave behind. So this next world, this next emergence that's happening will be better. Not just for me, not just for you, but your children, your grandchildren. And I think that's something Indigenous people have been able to hold for millennia. Even when the greatest devastations have happened to us, we still sing our songs, we still make good jokes, but it's because those stories are the blueprints. They're our technology. And I'm asking you to think about that technology. because the role of indigenous wisdom is clear. As you probably have heard, and if you haven't, the Earth's remaining 80% biodiversity is stewarded on indigenous peoples' lands. If indigenous people globally are maintaining the remaining full vitality of the land, what does it say about what we know that we are doing right? We are not side conversations. We need to be at the center and included because our histories and stories and songs are literally the infrastructure of the future. And it is sophisticated. I want to say that it is sophisticated. It's sometimes so sophisticated, people assume it's just sacred or it's just a song. But these stories have carried us for thousands of years. So I invite you, as you move into this space, into this room of impact investing and conversations on how do we do good with capital, is that you remind yourselves that we have teachers here. But what are your stories? What are your songs? Whatever this was last year isn't where we are today. The world has fundamentally shifted, and we are out of time for being indecisive. If you are serious, let us lean into SOCAP 2025 as the year where we stop making everything has to be perfect, that the terms and your ROI looks just what you need. Let's work harder, bridge those gaps, and truthfully, let's move those resources. It's not the first time anyone has said this, but this is the call to action. Build relationship, build kinship, but walk away with what you need. And if you're someone who has something somebody needs, find a way through. Because that is the only way we do this together. And so, in closing, as I stand here thinking about my family and the songs I grew up with, I hope we can move differently today and tomorrow and the rest of the week. As you hear from some of the greatest minds and most visionary leaders, I hope those with capacity and resources will push through your discomfort. Push past the need for perfect data and move toward a right relationship, because we're emerging whether you're ready or not. So, in that spirit, let's open SOCAP 2025, not just as another conference, but as a collective emergence. And let this be the year we remember. We were here, and we did something about it. Yeah. So you're not exactly rid of me, because I get to invite and welcome my dear friend, brother, Edgar Villanueva, to the stage. We're going to have a fireside chat, because Edgar's a really interesting person, if you don't know. So let me get started. I'm going to do my kind of introduction of Edgar. So I met Edgar in 2018 at a conference in Asilomar called Shift Capital. Anyone remember that conference? All right. Some of us were there. Edgar had just published his first book, Decolonizing Wealth. If you haven't heard of it, he will be signing later today after this. But Edgar kind of articulated something, I think, me as someone who was trying to figure out what finance means, what capital means, what is philanthropy, just articulated was this idea that if money is just a tool of today, like many tools, it's about who wields that tool. And what if we wielded that tool differently and we did it with healing and care? What if that tool wasn't harmful? And so that was like the first time I got to hear Edgar speak. And honestly, immediately stalked him, found him, invited him to everything I could possibly do. And I'm proud to say 7 years later, I get to continue to do this. So thank you, Edgar. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for your words, and I feel very mutual. I stalk Vanessa, and thank SOCAP. I haven't been here in a few years, and this is very different. And I remember literally when you said a tent, my first time here, we were in a tent outside the building, having program that was very separate from the main program. And to see Indigenous people centered in this moment and leading discussions and bringing our perspective here is really profound and really the right thing to do. So it's really good to be here today.
So let's get to know Edgar. And if you don't know him, you should. So at Decolonizing Wealth Project, which is actually Edgar's institution and organization that was founded how long ago? 7 years ago. At DWP, you've launched the Moonshot. It's a bold, long-term vision for collective healing and repair. So what have you learned about what it takes to bring people and institutions around a big goal?
Yeah, thank you. So Decolonizing Wealth Project was an organization that I had planned to start. I did release a book in 2018, as Vanessa said, and I was working at a foundation and started, had a few book events planned, and that spilled over into 2019. And I'm still on a book tour 7 years later, signing books after this, which I deeply appreciate. But what happened from there that I think, that catalyzed a movement within social finance and philanthropy was not just my book or whatever. There are lots of people who have been planting these seeds and pushing for change, for a long time. But in that moment, I think that we were able to give language through the power of storytelling, and that brought in something that was beyond sort of these intellectual models and frameworks, right? We teach that, but we also brought in spirit and the humanity into this work in a really different way, and really shifted this paradigm of like us versus them, donor recipient, rich versus poor, to really help folks understand what we've always known, that we are all related and in this thing together called life. And you giving money is not about you doing a good thing and identifying a partner and investing in their work and getting an ROI. That's that transactional nature, but it's actually you investing into your future. And I decided a long time ago that I was done asking and begging for money for poor Black and brown people, that I'm actually extending a lifeline into your humanity by inviting you to move resources over here, because what we're working on is our collective liberation, right? What Indigenous people are doing is not just trying to secure our futures, but to protect this planet and the futures for all of us. And the people who get that gladly resource and move money here. And so DWP has since been working with hundreds of philanthropists, donors, investors, foundations, corporations to share our framework around repair. It's about facing the truth about how capital got to be where it is now in the first place, and then bringing in the lens of repair. How do we repair what's broken? And God knows so much is broken, and it seems to be getting worse every day because we're not investing in the root causes of what's making us sick in the first place. And so that work has resulted in some really beautiful things that give me hope. And I think that what has catalyzed a lot of folks around the big idea is the power of storytelling, the proof of concept, and because everything else is not working. If it was working, y'all, we wouldn't be here today in worse shape than we were before. So let's invite y'all into this conversation for what's working, because Indigenous people have been here for thousands of years, and we know some things, and I'm so thankful that folks are finally listening. In 5 years, we did a report and saw that we had unlocked $1 billion in capital toward repair. Thank you. We're really proud of that. This is working directly with philanthropist corporations to move new money through the lens of racial justice, equity to communities who are at the margins, who have suffered the most because of our broken economic system. And so we're really proud of that, but yet it's a drop in the bucket. And so our moonshot, our new 10-year strategy is to unlock $1 trillion. That may seem like a lot of money to folks in the room. Some people gasp when I say that. The other day I was at a bank headquarters and said that, and they were like, that's all? Like, that's nothing, right? So It is, I think what gets us together is one, the power of understanding that we're all in this thing together, and it's your success is deeply tied to my success. We've got to move beyond the individual thinking and everybody being the CEO and needing to create their own new thing to like moving quickly to move capital through these systems that we have built. If you want to invest in indigenous communities, we have built the infrastructure to move big capital really quickly to those communities. And so that's the moment that we're in as we are facing the downfall of democracy. There is an urgency to act fast and to move resources to communities that know how to actually save our society.
I just, the thing that has been helpful for me over these years doing this work, and I've not been doing this very long. Some of you you've seen the evolution of the space, the sector. The thing that's come up mostly is like, well, we need the vehicles. How do we know it works? And I just want to say, like, when we start from a place of, do the right things exist and how do we know it works, it means we're actually not in good relationship with the folks doing it, nor in the communities. Because communities know what they're doing, and it's worked. We're just not capitalized at the level we could. And imagine if Edgar was capitalized to achieve 1 trillion moonshot, what's possible? And so in that vein of, how do we know, what is the right structures, like, why 1 trillion?
Why not? Because, last year, conservative donors invested $1 billion in keeping people from not voting. We know the cost of inequality on our businesses, the impact of not centering and moving money to folks who have been harmed and marginalized because of our history and systems has cost us a lot. And so it's really, again, a drop in the bucket to begin to shift capital in ways that can center these communities and from a reparative lens. And it's also, again, not just about repairing the communities who have been the most harmed, it's about repairing all of us. There is something fundamentally broken with our history and the premises upon which this country was founded, which then, of course, informed and created the economic systems that we're all working in. And if we don't go back to address those roots, then those cycles of violence and disconnection continue to happen across all of our communities. And so 1 trillion is like literally nothing. We did that with 1 billion with very little investment. And so now with all of us together to get to 1 trillion is really not a far-fetched goal.
So 1 trillion, that's what we all should be asking for, I think, by the way. We're gonna wrap up, but before we do, Edgar, I hope this doesn't feel dark. I hope you see the possibilities. So what's like one, sorry to add, quick sentence you could say that offers hope to this room?
Yeah, we are not powerless. There is a lot going on. I've had anxiety about coming here because we know the National Guard is being deployed in San Francisco, and I've got my tribal ID in my pocket because I'm not trying to get picked up. It's really scary times, but we are not powerless. We are not, without hope. What I've seen happen over the past, 5 to 7 years with this beautiful transformation that can happen in the lives of individuals who actually submit to this, who get out of their head and the perfection that you mentioned, and and rethink the incentives and ROI and lead from a place of spirit and heart. I've seen personal transformation in the lives of people. I've seen families have different dynamics, and then organizations. So healing is very powerful. It's something that sometimes cannot be quantified and put into a financial model, but it is powerful. And so this work is more than transactional. It is more than just numbers on a page that add up through all these variables, but there is fundamentally a spiritual renewal and awakening and a connection that we can have as human beings, and that gives me hope. And I also what else works better? If you have an idea, please come tell me after, because I haven't seen anything. So I'm putting all my energy behind this because I've seen it work time and time again. And I know that it's what's worked for our communities. And we're so generous to share this with all of y'all and invite y'all into this so we can survive, what's the end of this world together. So please come by and meet me at the booth. And thank you for listening to us today.
All right, next I am thrilled to introduce a key supporter of SOCAP and a true pioneer in the impact investing and social innovation space. Jim Sorenson is a CEO, entrepreneur, and one of the leading investors in the world in the impact space. He started his journey with a belief that business and investments can do good and do well. And he did just that at Sorenson Communications, where he led the development of life-changing technologies for those who are deaf and hard of hearing. Jim is a true pioneer in the impact space. He's also the name, the vision, and the character behind Sorenson Impact Institute at the University of Utah, where he and his team are developing and cultivating the next generation of social impact leaders. And so thank you, Jim. He gets to teach all about social capitalism. And I'm a professor myself, and I'll tell you that the younger generations are hopeful. And so thank you, Jim, for your work in developing these young leaders, and the stage is yours.
I noticed in the registration lobby a sign that read, "Make a smoothie that changes the world, ingredients provided by your new friends." Intrigued, a group formed. Priya brought bananas because they're high in potassium and potential. Miguel offered kale because every impact story needs something green and slightly hard to digest. Aisha contributed mangoes for joy and scalability. And Tom, the skeptic investor, hesitated, then added ice for liquidity. They blended their ingredients, took a sip, and declared it surprisingly good. That said, Priya said, "Is the taste of collaboration or compromise," muttered Tom, but he went back for seconds. Later, their impromptu smoothie summit drew a crowd. Soon, 20 new smoothies and at least 10 new partnerships were born, all because a few strangers shared ingredients and ideas. By the end of the conference, someone had already drafted a term sheet for blended capital, accelerating impact through shared ingredients. Now, I have to confess that I resorted to a little bit of AI with that opening story. But I made sure to look out for algorithmic bias before accepting it. Every year when I come to this gathering, I feel a renewed sense of purpose. The conversations, the energy, the diversity of people and ideas, this community continues to be one of the most powerful forces for change anywhere in the world. So thank you for being here, for traveling across continents, for setting aside busy schedules and bringing your ideas, inspirations, and leadership to work, all for building a better world, which begins in this room today. We meet at a time when the challenges before us are urgent and undeniable. Equality is being called into question. Trust is eroding, divisions are rampant, and our planet is under strain. Yet I continue to be hopeful because I see a new generation of builders, investors, and entrepreneurs like those in this room today who are refusing to accept that this is the best we can do. We are here because we believe that markets, when guided by purpose, remain one of the most powerful tools for human progress, that capitalism can evolve, and that the same forces that once fueled extraction and inequality can now drive inclusion, resilience, and shared prosperity. This is the essence of what I call impact capitalism, using the full spectrum of capital, financial, human, social, and creative to do good, or to do well while doing good. It's about seeing social and environmental problems not just as tragedies, but as market opportunities waiting for solutions. Over the next 3 days, we'll hear extraordinary ideas and meet people who are turning these ideas into action, reimagining ownership, redesigning finance, deploying technology responsibly, and expanding opportunity in ways that are both profitable and just. Together, we'll see how philanthropy, private investment, and policy can intersect, not in silos, but in synergy to scale what works, or make smoothies that change the world. But as inspiring as this gathering always is, the real test is what happens when we leave this room. Will these ideas stay in our notebooks, or will we turn them into partnerships, new funds, new commitments? The truth is, we need proof points that scale. We need to take the courage and creativity we celebrate here and apply them with urgency and discipline when we go home. Each of us has a role to play as investors, entrepreneurs, policymakers, philanthropists, or storytellers in shaping a capitalism that serves humanity than the other way around. This isn't someone else's responsibility, it's ours. So as we begin these next few days together, my challenge is simple. Be bold, take risks, collaborate in ways that might feel a little uncomfortable, but are absolutely necessary. Let's make sure that when we look back at this moment, we can say, this is where the word became action. Thank you and welcome to SOCAP.